Welcome to the 2025-2026 HPNAP Operations Support Capital Equipment Grant Information Session. Let's dive right in. The Hunger Prevention and Nutrition Assistance Program, or HPNAP, was established in 1984 as a result of public health concerns around nutrition-related illnesses among people in need of food assistance. HPNAP, in partnership with organizations that serve the hungry, like food banks, are dedicated to reducing long-term chronic disease risk and improving the health and nutritional status of folks in need of food assistance. Operation support grants are part of HPNAP funding, which provide non-food support to eligible emergency food programs for such things as staffing, utilities, space, disposables, and food service or capital equipment. Grants are awarded on a competitive basis, and the amount of an operation support grant is limited to a variable based on annual state budget appropriations. Submission of an application does not guarantee an award, and agencies should not include operation support funds as part of their annual budget. This is an extra, and it's above and beyond what you should already have budgeted for your annual operations. HPNAP Operation Support Capital Equipment grants are only available for a few types of agencies. Food pantries must be open at least once a month and have set hours. Community meals, in this grant they're referred to as soup kitchens, must also be open to anyone to attend. And lastly, emergency shelters. To be eligible to apply for HPNAP Operation Support Funds, your program or emergency food program must have been providing emergency food services for at least 6 months at the time of the application and operate within the 6-county service area of the Food Bank of the Southern Tier. So this would include Steuben, Schuyler, Chemung, Tompkins, Tioga, and Broome counties. An emergency food program must comply with the following eligibility criteria to be able to provide documentation of nonprofit status under Section 501c3 and the Internal Revenue Code, possession of a federal tax identification number documented through a copy of the U.S. Department of Treasury IRS correspondence indicating the organization's federal tax ID number, and your current tax exemption status. The good news for current partners of the Food Bank of the Southern Tier is we already have these documents on file. If you are not a direct partner with the Food Bank of the Southern Tier, you would have to provide these documents to be able to continue on with the application. Also, proper food service permits are required if you are offering ready-to-eat meals. Something new in the application this year is county requirements, because each of our counties requires a little bit different permit depending on the type of community meal you're offering. This application contained in these documents identifies food pantries, soup kitchens, and those shelters as examples of potential eligible service operations. Incorporation is not required to receive HPNAP funds. Emergency food programs with existing direct New York State Department of Health HPNAP contracts are not eligible, and partnership with the food bank is not required to submit this application. Operation support awards provide funding to agencies currently providing emergency food to low-income and or food insecure New Yorkers. Submission of an operation support application does not guarantee that your total funding request will be granted or that an award will be granted at all. This funding is to supplement your organization's current operating funds. Funds may not be used as startup costs for new activities or to pay for new staffing positions. These grants are awarded for one or a combination of the following 6 expenditure categories. Staff costs, only direct service workers may be funded. This includes individuals in the serving or storing of food, such as cooks, kitchen help, and pantry volunteers, as well as food service or storage area cleanup people. Administrative personnel, such as bookkeepers and directors, or non-food workers like maintenance workers, those just aren't fundable. Utilities, food service work or storage area utility costs, such as heating, water, and electricity, may be funded. Trash and recycling removal, sewage charges, telephone or internet costs, and costs associated with anything other than food service or storage are not fundable through this particular grant. Space. Costs for currently occupied space for a direct food service program or storage area may be funded. Space shared with other programs is to be prorated to compute the portion used for the emergency food service. And how that is computed is by providing a blueprint. Costs for administrative offices are just not fundable through this particular grant, and operation support may fund rent or user fees, but cannot be used to pay for mortgage payments or any payment in excess of the actual charges for your program. Food service disposables and other supplies. Non-durable disposable supplies necessary to the provision of emergency food may be funded. This includes, but is not limited to, paper and plastic bags, disposable plates, cups and dinnerware, plastic wrap, aluminum foil, cardboard boxes, and food containers. Some durable, non-disposable items may also be funded, but these items must be necessary for the provision, safe handling, and safe transport of emergency food. And requests for non-durable items must include a written specific justification for the need of such items. Supplies that are not necessary to the provision of food, such as office supplies, toilet paper, and cleaning materials, are not fundable. Also not fundable are food packets. So if you are trying to provide individual packets of mustard or mayonnaise, those are also not fundable through this particular grant. Supplies needed for the distribution of takeout meals will continue to be eligible for funding. And please note, disposable food safety and sanitation supplies, such as aprons, gloves, and hand soap, while not available through this particular grant, may be available for free from the food bank of the 7th tier. We will coordinate distribution of these products if and when they come in for eligible meal sites. Transportation. Costs for the transportation of food from retailers or vendors to your program site may be funded. This may include payments to rent or lease vehicles, which is the rent and lease option, or mileage reimbursement at up to 70 cents per mile for the mileage option. Costs for delivering food from your program site to pantry recipients may also be permitted due to COVID impacts. Costs for picking up food at the food bank are not fundable. So looking at the rent or lease option, if your vehicle rent or lease option is being used, all records documenting the payment of funds to the renting agency are to be retained. Vehicles must be a cargo type van or a truck, and payments to your program staff or volunteers for the use of their personally owned vehicles is not allowable under this option. If the mileage option is being used, your program staff or volunteer may be reimbursed for actual mileage incurred on personally owned vehicles. A log showing dates, destination, and odometer readings must be turned into the food bank. And regardless of the method used, your program must retain records, receipts, invoices, bills of lading, etc., sufficient to prove that the transportation charged to the state was required to move food from source to the food pantry or meal site, or from your program to an individual's home for a home delivery. Incomplete documentation will result in the loss of state funds. The second part of the grant is capital equipment. An emergency food program may request funding for new food service equipment, items essential to their emergency food operations. Requesting equipment must be new, preferably commercial grade, and meet the local and state sanitation and fire safety code requirements. Priority will be given to the following items like refrigerators and freezers, stoves and ovens, metal shelving, 3-compartment sinks and hand washing sinks, hand trucks, exhaust hoods, and fire suppression systems if they are required by codes in your specific facility. These are all necessary to maintain the current operation of an emergency feeding site. The funds may not be used to purchase disposable items, used or reconditioned equipment, office equipment, computer hardware, air conditioners, heating units and fans and dehumidifiers, vehicles, or wooden or plastic shelving, custom-made appliances and equipment, small electrical appliances, or small kitchen utensils. The purchase of equipment for food pantries that would like to transition to a more enhanced client choice model of operation, such as nicer tables and display shelving or shopping carts, this is acceptable. This grant can cover reasonable delivery fees and or service plans. Food service equipment awardees should ensure that the delivery charges will be covered to cost the delivery of the equipment to the exact location where the equipment will be utilized. For example, if you're purchasing a freezer, the freezer is delivered to the inside placement of your pantry where it will be used to store food, not on the sidewalk or in a driveway. Operation support grants will not fund building alterations, wiring, plumbing work, or any other installation charges or alterations to your building. The agency is required and responsible for paying any alterations or installation costs. If you need assistance in selecting the appropriate equipment, please contact your programs and partnerships coordinator at the food bank. Assistance and information may also be available from one of our preferred food service equipment sales representatives. We have a couple of local restaurant supply stores that we have really good experience working with. You're not required to go to them, but they can also be a really good resource for you. And agencies considering an appliance request should be sure that the building where the equipment will be located has sufficient electrical capacity, plumbing capabilities, space, ventilation, and entryway clearance for the desired equipment upon delivery. Not just an entryway clearance, be aware that it's the external door, the piece of equipment needs to make it through, any internal doors. And if it has to go down a hallway and there's a sharp turn in the hallway, is it going to have clearance to make that turn? So keep all of these things in mind if you are requesting equipment. And funds for equipment grants are limited, so applicants should prioritize their needs and only request essential equipment. Applicants must obtain at least 2 vendor price quotes for each piece of equipment requested. The request is to be based on an actual quote, not on a temporary sale price. And if possible, have the vendor guarantee the equipment price. These grants are being applied for in March and April. This is when you're doing your legwork and getting the quotes. If you are awarded, you will not receive that check until the end of July. So keep that in mind when you're looking at price guarantees from vendors. Agencies may apply for operation support and/or capital equipment. The maximum amount an agency may request in operation support is $6,000, and the maximum amount an agency may request in capital equipment is $8,000. The total maximum amount an agency may request is $14,000. This all sounds like a wonderful opportunity, right? And it really is. However, we need to stress how competitive this grant really is. We only have $158,413,000 to award. So let's recap what happened last year. 70 agencies applied, and unfortunately, 13 agencies were denied awards. The total requested funds came in at $469,413. And just like this year, last year we only had $158,413 to award. That means that there were $311,000 left on the table in unfunded requests from New York State. Luckily, Food Bank of the Southern Tier had some internal equipment funds last year, and we were able to award an additional $116,000 worth of equipment with other funding sources, meaning that the actual unfunded amount of total requests that came in was more like $195,000. Still a large amount of money and awards unfunded. The Food Bank of the Southern Tier does not have the budget to do this again this year. So this is off the table. The review committee is composed of a HPNAP agency representative from each of the 6 counties in our service area, food bank staff from different departments within the company here, as well as a community member who happens to also be a client. Really looking for that diverse set of eyes to be put onto reading and evaluating each of these applications. Each reviewer will read and score your application, and then all the scores are averaged out and ranked. This helps guide the conversation when it comes to making decisions. The review committee will then meet in person to discuss and deliberate each application and determine awards. There must be a consensus for all applications. No one person makes any decisions. And if you're looking for some guidance in this, Bree Harris and myself are not part of the review committee or the decision-making team. We are here just to keep the process moving forward and to support our agencies who are applying for this grant opportunity. We really strive for objectivity, and we know we're a small food bank in a very small region of New York State, and it's kind of like that little village where everybody knows everybody. And because of that, we really wanted to try to eliminate any unintended biases or unconscious biases. And for, again, this year, we are keeping all applications anonymous. No member of the review committee will be able to see the name of your agency or your program. There are actually repeated instructions within the application reminding you not to write any identifying names or features of any kind in any of your responses. This also includes any uploaded documentation that may be required. So if you are applying for staffing and you need to upload that job description, please ensure that you have redacted, whited out, or blacked out the name of your agency on the job description. Failure to do so may actually result in a deduction on your score, because if I or Bree have to go in and redact your application to keep it anonymous, we will be removing points from your score. What the review committee is actually looking for is really good guidance for anyone applying, because this kind of helps you understand what you should be focusing on when writing the grant application. It's always good to know what folks want to hear. And here are some really good helpers, some nice tips. Did you answer all of the required questions and answer them completely and clearly? Did you fully complete all sections of the table? Is your math correct? Did you upload all of the required supporting documentation? Are your quotes eligible, and do they include everything that you are requesting? There is the collaborate feature, so you do not have to do this alone. We encourage you to invite other members from your agency to collaborate on writing this application. They could just be reviewing it, you do the bulk of it, they review it, or you're writing it collaboratively. You take one section, another person takes another section, and then you're coming together to have a discussion. There are actually bonus points as well as the regular point system that New York State provides. Agencies will not be penalized for not providing services that are eligible for bonus points. These are extra things that some of our partner agencies do that is not on New York State's radar. So they're not scoring for it. But we want to make sure that we are giving some incentive and additional bonus points to agencies that are doing some of the above and beyond what is required by New York State. Let's take a look at what this might actually look like. An example of how an application is scored. This is like the total maximum amount of points. There is the objective score, the subjective score, and the maximum bonus points. The objective score is what it is. There's no flex here. This is based on the county you are in, and within that county, the meal gap and the percentage of low-income individuals. The type of program you are, whether you're a pantry, a community meal, or a shelter. The number of people you served last year, and how often your program was open each month last year. So again, this is information that is static. It's not going to change. And so the objective score is what it is. And you can receive up to 75 points here. The subjective score is just that, a score that is based on or influenced by what is written by you within the grant and how it is read by the reviewer. While only being worth 25 points, this is the critical 25 points. This is where you actually have some influence. So be sure to follow the instructions, do all the things that you need to do, encourage other folks at your program to collaborate with you and get it in early for early review. Last but not least are the bonus points. And it could be up to 9 points per application. It varies. And these are exactly that. So an example of this could be that your pantry provides home deliveries, and the reviewer would award bonus points for that. Home deliveries is not required by the Food Bank of the Southern Tier. It is also not required by New York State. So New York State isn't awarding any points for it. But we recognize that this is a wonderful extra that your program is doing. So we want to give some bonus points for it. Again, nobody is being penalized for not having a home delivery system or program. So these all add up, and then they are averaged out with all of the other reviewers. You could potentially get up to about 109 points. All the reviewers will score, will average it out, and then that just starts the conversation. Just because you have a good score doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get a full award. Factors at play, and it's going to be up to the decision made by that committee. So let's go ahead and take a look at this year's application, and we'll go through section by section, and hopefully it'll allow some clarity and connecting of the dots from what we just discussed. When you first log in and click on apply in our grants management site, what will pop up are the instructions, and everything I just covered will be reiterated in writing in the instruction section. Take your time, read all of the instructions so that you are ensuring that you're not missing anything. Any changes from last year's instructions to this year's will be identified in red. Some of this information isn't new, it's always been required, but now we're really calling attention to it. For example, that right here at the beginning, HPNAP grant funds are designed to supplement and or match a program's own efforts. Funds should not be viewed as a sole means of support. New York State really wants to drive this home that this should not be the only way you're able to stay afloat and do the work you're doing. This should be an extra for you. It goes over eligibility again, the scope of the application, which includes all the different funding categories, budget categories that you could potentially apply for funds through. We do have our list of preferred vendors. This is not a complete list of local vendors that do this work. We just have a history of really good working relationship with these three agencies, these three companies. So we do encourage folks to go to them. Calls out the award limitations and the administration and documentation. This here is going to tell you what we're going to need from you. We're going to give you notification of any awards and then what you will be responsible for in following up, whether it is proof of purchases, it's canceled checks, whatever that might be. Documentation is also listing all of that information out a little bit more clearly. We have the deadline for the application. Again, this is listed in here like 3 times, and I'm going to say it again multiple times in this training. Friday, May 16th. Get it in by then. If you need help, you can always reach out to your programs and partnerships coordinator. If it's a technical issue, reach out to Bree Harris or myself. If you want a little bit more fine detail into the scoring process and how each type of question or information is weighted in the scoring, that's listed right here. So simply the number of people that you served each month last year in 2024, that's worth 25 points out of the 75 points of the objective scoring. So this really shows how it's weighted. And really important, what could you possibly be deducted for? How are you going to lose points? And those are called out right here. I will list them out. So we're going to work from the bottom up. Failure to upload documentation through our grants management system from the previous HPNAP grant. So if you were awarded last year and you just mailed your supporting documentation to the food bank and didn't attempt to upload it yourself, you will lose automatically 5 points. We have this grants management system. Please at least attempt it. It's not as hard as many people sometimes worry about. It is very user-friendly. And we can also guide you through the process. If you submit your application late, we do have a 1-week extension to receive late applications. They will automatically get deducted 5 points. If food bank staff have to go in and redact any of your application because you left identifying comments, words, and features in your application, we will automatically take off 10 points. Remember, we want to strive to keep this as anonymous to maintain the unbiased perspective of our reviewers. We harp on you about getting your stats in every month, and this is part of the reason why. We report to New York State. So New York State says, hey, if they were late with their monthly stats 3 or more months in the previous calendar year, so in 2024, you will automatically lose 10 points off of your score. If you wait to the last minute to submit your application and we do not have a chance to review it and send it back for recommended edits, it's possible that you might miss some signatures or you may not answer all the questions, may not have everything uploaded. You're going to lose 15 points. So get it in early so that we can put another set of eyes on it. Always collaborate with other folks at your agency to ensure that nothing is missing. If you didn't cash the check that we sent you last year, if you applied last year and were awarded within 90 days, you're going to lose 15 points. You have to cash your checks. Don't just sit on it. Try not to lose it. Let's be responsible. This is New York State money here. And then last but not least, if you wait to the last minute and you are submitting incomplete or late documentation from the previous HPNAP year, and it's just not getting to us on time, and you're not working with us, you will lose 15 points. This calls out like how likely are you to receive an an award, and what you need to do throughout this if you do receive it. And then what documentation should you send in after you receive your award? We will have follow-up documentation required at the 6-month mark and at the 12-month mark. And this really just states what you could potentially supply us with. Some of the categories give you options, so you don't have to just do the one thing, but not all are like that. So for space, you do have to have like that current rental lease agreement, supporting documentation, and then proof of percentages of space that were paid out. And the last thing that we want to cover before we dive into the actual application questions is the timeline. So I'll go over this again later, but the application, we need to receive it by May 16th. That's the first due date. That's the main due date. You do have a week after that to submit for late submission. You'll lose points and you won't have the opportunity to have somebody here at the food bank review it first. Capital equipment documentation to the food bank. This date is new for us. It used to be 6 months out. We have changed that. If you are awarded funding for equipment, you must submit your proof of purchase by October 1st. Send us any unspent capital equipment money by February 6th. So you're going to get your equipment, and then you're going to have a few months to get your books together and figure out how much you actually need to reimburse us for. And then if we do receive that money back because you didn't spend it all, maybe you got a better price on something, we will then redistribute that unspent money. First half operation support documentation is always due the 1st February of the following year. So February 6th, 2026. If you didn't spend all of your operation support money, get it back to us by June 5th, again, so that we can redistribute that to other awardees who could potentially spend it. And then the last bit of documentation for this grant would be your second half documentation required. Again, that's the first Friday in August for 2026. That's August 7th. Let's take a look at the grant. Your first question that you must answer is, are you currently a partner agency of the Food Bank of the Southern Tier? Most applicants are. And so once you hit yes, it's just going to drop a bunch of questions that all applicants will be completing. The answer is no, because remember, you do not have to be a partner agency of the food bank to be eligible for operation support. You just have to be operating with the correct eligibility within our 6-county service area. So if it's a no, more questions will be prompted so that you can upload your 501c3 documentation and proof that you've been operating and you do have that charity designation. For today, we're just going to hit yes because we are a food bank partner. Each of these sections, every agency will be required to complete. We have your basic agency information, what type of agency, and your budget proposals. These questions here will populate and drop down specific sections to the type of agency you are and what you're requesting funding for. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Your HPNAP ID number under your agency information. If you look back up to the top of your screen where it has your agency name, if you're a food bank partner, there's a set of numbers before your agency name and there's a set of numbers after. The set of numbers after your name starts with a 7 and it's a 5-digit number. That is your HPNAP ID number. If you are not sure, ask your programs and partnerships coordinator. What is your agency type? Food pantry has, if you click on that, food pantry specific questions will drop. The same for soup kitchens and shelters. New this year is what county you're in, because each county may have different requirements around food service permits, and we actually included those requirements for those specific counties if you are a soup kitchen or a shelter. You'll just have to tell us what county you're in. Even if you're a pantry, still tell us what county, and those specific questions will drop. Budget proposal funding. You can apply for any combination of these: utilities, staff, space, transportation, disposables, and capital equipment. Reminder is up here, how much you can apply for. Partial funding is not available for equipment exceeding $8,000. So if you're looking to get a walk-in freezer and it costs more than $8,000, you will be denied because New York State cannot partially own a piece of equipment. Each one of these boxes will drop a new section. So we'll come back to this after we do our specific questions for pantries, soup kitchens, and shelters. I want to go through the questions first. So food pantries, tell us the geographic area that you actually serve. Please be specific. Oh, and where it says a school district or a county, you don't have to tell us what county it is. You don't have to tell us the name of your school district. Again, those are identifying features. Just simply say the local school district or we serve our entire county. Here's one of those bonus questions. Are home deliveries offered? Yes or no? Just super simple. When are you open for pantry? What are your distribution hours? How many days per week? How many days per month are you actually open for pantry? Just check whichever one it is. We have a few pantries that have custom hours and those that don't fit into the table above. So where we have many pantries that are like first and third of Thursday of the week or of the month, or second and fourth Monday of the month, those are fine to list above, but when you have to do every other week, it doesn't always fall on a first or a third business. So go ahead and include that here. Also, if you are open the second Wednesday and the following Thursday, something like that, you could put that in here as well. Now we're going to look a little bit more into people that you're actually serving. New this year is how many days worth of food are you handing out at each pantry distribution? And then tell us how many meals per day is it that you're actually providing? So you'll say that you're providing 5 days worth of food, but how many meals out of those 5 days are you providing for an individual within that family? No different from previous years, your regular food distributions, this is duplicated. This is not unique families, unique individuals. This is duplicated. How many requests for food did you have in 2024? And then you'll break it down by the month. And by request for food, this means they had access to the entire pantry. Extra food distributions, this could be where a client did not have access to the full pantry because you only allow a client to access the full pantry once a month, but on those other weeks, they could come in and get just bread and produce and retail donated product. They don't have access to the full pantry, but they can get some of the extras. List those out here by the year and by the month. Holiday baskets. There's several partners that provide holiday baskets like Thanksgiving or Christmas that might have a box full of some grocery items, but it's not really a full pantry visit because it's limited to whatever is in the box. If a client does not have access to the full pantry, they're just getting that box, those are going to go right here. How many did you do for the total year and how many for the monthly average. These will add up to give you all of your distributions. The next section is publicity and access. How are you letting people in your community know that you are open for business? How are you letting them know where to get food? So you would check all that apply. And then how are you enhancing individuals' access to and for the use of nutritious food? Again, all that apply. And if you're doing something outside of what's listed here, please write it down. List it out so that the reviewers can really take that into consideration. We want to know if somebody from your program regularly attended your county's coalition meetings. They're quarterly, so there's only 4 a year. If they did, tell us why you see value in sending them to the coalition meetings. If nobody did and you didn't regularly attend, tell us why. What were the barriers? What was keeping you from attending those meetings? And then every applicant, regardless of what type of agency you are, will have to answer all of these questions. How long were you in operation? Have you been? And then tell us your story. Give us a little bit of a biography about the startup and the continuation of your program. Please remember not to include any identifying features here. We don't want to be reducing anybody's score at this point. Strengths. How have you shared your strengths with and or learned from the strengths of other pantries or meal sites or shelters or anybody that's doing hunger relief within your community? Share your strengths. This is really hard for a lot of people to do this self-assessment and share what they're really good at or what you guys do that's a little bit different. What do you do outside the box? Maybe you offer special distribution times for senior populations, or you have those evening and weekend hours to help meet the needs of working families. Whatever those might be, list them out here. And it's never going to be, well, that's just too much stuff. No, that's never the case. Tell us, because the review committee is coming in blind. They don't know who you are. So whatever is on here is what they have to go with. So if you just put a sentence, your score is probably not going to reflect as highly as some others. And then working with others. We want to see that collaboration within your community. And it could be with any type of organization, but you're going to list the organization and you're going to tell us what you're doing with them. For example, Boy Scouts. I'm not saying which troop it is. I'm saying Boy Scouts. And maybe they come in and they volunteer, they carry out packages, and they also contribute with a food drive. You collaborate with several local churches. You don't have to say the First Presbyterian Church of Johnson City. Just say the local First Presbyterian Church or the local Baptist Church and explain how you're collaborating. The same thing with the school districts. We are seeing much more collaboration with school districts across our service area. Don't say the name of the district. Just say the local school district. Again, keep it generic so that we're not unduly influencing a reviewer's perspective or opinion. Toot your horn here. Have other people collaborate with you, because it's entirely possible that you're not going to remember all the amazing things that you did or that you do. So let others help. So let's go back up to what type of agency we are, because that concluded all of the questions for a food pantry. Now we're going to see what is required for a meal site. So we're going to click on Soup Kitchen. Again, we're going to skip the budget proposals and go down to the first Soup Kitchen question. Again, we're asking, are home deliveries offered? Tell us when you're open and serving meals. You're going to give us the times and then tell us which meals you're providing. And then also, we're curious about how many of these meals are grab and go or takeout. So just give us the percentage. How often are you open and providing meals throughout the month? Just pick the one that you are. And describe the average meal served. Tell us what type, if you are a 3-course meal, tell us and give us an example of that. If you only offer soup and salad, tell us that, give us an example of that. And then also, if you have it, we will gladly accept an uploaded example of either your January menu, if you have that, or a month's menu, a week's menu, or a menu for a day. This is just extra information to help tell your story. Now on to the meals served. How many annual meals did you serve? Again, this is request for meals because you're not tracking individual people, and then average it out by 12 months. Because I chose Broome County, I list here the requirements for a food permit or permission to operate a community meal in Broome County. This is what is required. And based on the type of program you are, you may have different requirements. What we're asking now, instead of do you have a health permit for your county? Do you have the required documentation? Because not all meal sites in Broome County require a health permit now. So do you have what's required based on the information above? And then publicity and access. How are you letting folks know that you have a community meal that's open to anybody to drop in for a hot meal? And rather, how are you enhancing people's access to and the use of nutritious foods? What are you doing with those meals? Check all that apply. If you're doing other things that aren't listed, list them out. And in 2024, did someone from your agency regularly attend county coalition meetings? Yes or no? So that's all of the soup kitchen specific questions. Let's go back up and take a look at the shelter ones. For shelters, we want to know about your per diem rate. Do you have a per diem rate? What is it? And then tell us a little bit more about which meals you are requesting funding for and why. Same thing for accessibility. How many days of the week are you open? Days of the month are you open? And we're looking for the number of guests and how long their average stay is at your shelter. How can clients or guests access meals? Tell us how they are prepared. Do you have that cook on site that prepares the meals for on site consumption? Or is it where a resident has access to the kitchen and they prepare their own meals? What days are you open and what are your hours for food service? Most shelters are 24 hours. So when are your meals actually taking place? So those are the hours we're looking for. And then list off which meals you're providing on Sunday and then again on Monday and so on and so forth. For the guests, the folks in your shelter, what is the average number of meals served each day based on the meal provided? So we're talking about breakfast, lunch, and dinner. How many average daily breakfast meals are you providing? Same thing with snacks, and it just gives the reviewers a little bit more insight into your operations. Do you actually provide meals to non-guests? And if it is a yes, there's one more question. What are those meals? And what is the average number of daily guests that are not housed at your facility? And then the publicity and access question is the same as the soup kitchens. So how are you letting folks know of your shelter? And then tell us about nutrient denseness and how you're giving nutritious opportunities in the meals to the people that you're serving. And now let's take a look at those budget categories. So the budget proposal funding categories. I'm going to go in and actually click on every one of these to drop them all down. You would only check the boxes of the categories you're actually applying for. So under staffing, it reminds you that only direct service workers may be funded. List out the title or the staff position. How many hours per week is actually being charged to the grant? What the hourly rate is. Keep in mind that it must be at least $15.50, which is the New York State minimum wage right now. How many weeks is going to be charged to the grant? And then what is the total request amount? You're going to take the number of weeks, hours per week by the hourly rate multiplied by the number of weeks to get your funding request amount. This program does not do multiplication across, but it does add them up. So whatever you put in this box will populate down here. And if you are applying for staffing support for two separate positions, it will add it up to give you your total staff request. What do we need to know from you for staffing? We need that job description. No, you do not have to do percentages this year. This is brand new. In previous years, you had to actually percentage out the time spent on each of those tasks. Now it's just asking you to highlight what the relevant and eligible tasks are for each of these positions. Remember that only the food service aspect of receiving, storing, distributing the food is eligible. Any administrative duties such as statistics or placing orders for food, that's not going to count. So keep that in mind. Highlight those tasks, upload the job description, make sure you redact it, and then tell us how you plan to show proof of payment when you do your first and second half documentations. You have to have paid for this position last year in 2024. Tell us how you paid for this position. Because remember, you can't apply for new or non-existing staff yet. So if you happen to have received HPNAP grant money from last year, put it in. Any other grants, all of this should be full out explaining how this staff person was paid. That's what the impact would be. So how would these requested funds support or improve your program's ability to provide food assistance to clients? Please be specific here. List your program's goals to maintain and or improve the quality or quantity of food assistance during 2025, 2026. Please, please, please do not give us a variation of allow us to hand out food. We know this. This is why you're asking for help. This is why you are doing the work you're doing. We need to know a little bit deeper. Tell us really what's going on and how getting these funds is going to impact your overall community support. So let's take a look at utilities. This might actually be one of the easiest sections to complete because it's really plug and play. If you are applying for utilities, there's Part A and Part B. Part A is the actual utility portion. This is based on your cold storage. We have a list of different types of cold storage that you could receive some funding for, and there's a cost associated with each of them. You simply tell us how many you have in use, and if I have 3 one-door refrigerators in use, again, the math doesn't go across. So make sure you have a calculator out and you have another person at your program who's double checking your math. If I have 3 single door refrigerators and I know the cost of a single door refrigerator is $111, I do the math, that is $333. But I also have a chest freezer, but I only have one of those, that's 111. So right now we have $444 for Part A. Part B is your lighting and climate control. This is based on how often you're open in the month. Let's say I'm open twice a month. So I simply take the amount that's listed here, put it in over in the column. So that's our Part B. Now we need to take Part A and Part B. So Part A was 444, Part B was 600. My total utility request is $1,044. This is the maximum amount that I can request for utilities based on my cold storage and my hours of operation. New this year is telling us the percentage of the utility bill that's actually being charged to the grant. If only a portion of your utility bill will be charged to this particular grant, explain what percentage of the bill will be charged and why. Again, you had to pay for electricity last year, so where did that funding come from? And tell us that community impact again. Click on space. Remember that space must be for currently occupied, either pantry, meal site, or storage. You're going to take your entire monthly rental cost, plug it in. What percentage of your monthly rental cost is going to be charged to the grant? What that equates to in a dollar amount, and then multiply that by 12 to get your full request amount. Explain that percentage of rent to be charged to the grant, just like utilities had to do, and why. We need a copy of your current lease agreement. Please make sure that you're redacting it. If you are in a shared space, we do need a copy of a blueprint that kind of calls out what is for a food service program and what is not. I don't need you to go to the engineers and the, the architects who created your space. You can simply do a pencil drawing, pen drawing, as long as it is to scale and clearly labeled for the reviewers to understand that it is a shared space. Make sure you upload that. Tell us how you paid for your rent last year and what is going to be the impact in your community if you do receive these funds. We look at food service disposables. We list out here some examples of what is allowable. This is not an exhaustive list. And we also give ideas of what is not fundable. We really should probably add in the packets of mayonnaise and the packets of mustard because those seem to be popping up lately. And before you continue, this is a stop. If you are applying for disposables, at this point, determine whether or not you're going to list out more than 10 items that you are going to request funding for. If the budget is more than 10 items, put it in a spreadsheet, put it in a Google Sheet, save it, and upload that. If it's less than 10 line items, you can use the table provided. What we need in both is the item description, whether or not it is COVID related, how many, the cost per unit, and the total item cost. This is going to tally up to give you your total budget amount that you can request. Here's your upload if you are requesting more than 10 line items. And if you think back, there were instructions saying that non-durable durable, non-disposable requests could be submitted, but you have to provide justification. So you have to write out why you need this and why it should be funded. And this is where you would upload that. Tell us how you paid for your disposables last year and what the impact on your community and your program is going to be if you are awarded these funds. Transportation. Again, those instructions, it calls out the 70 cents per mile that you can use. That is the federal amount for 2025. And also it reminds you that if you're coming to the food bank to pick up your orders, that's not fundable. Please list out all the places you're going and the reasons you're going, whether it is retail pickup or it is home delivery. How many of those trips are you making? What are your miles round trip, the total miles, and the full cost? So again, you're going to do some multiplication across to get that amount. And be sure to use at least up to 70 cents per mile. If you are on a trip to pick up retail donations and you actually make multiple stops on the same trip, do not list those out separately. List them out together because it's based on the trip. You can add up those miles together. So it's retail recovery, Tops, Wegmans, Weiss. How many trips? What is the total round trip? Okay. So make sure that you are putting it all together. If you are opting to do the vehicle rental as opposed to reimbursement for mileage, this is where you would have to upload 2 quotes from separate truck rental companies, separate vehicle rental companies. We need 2 different ones, and then also a copy of your current contract and payment receipts. Remember, you can't do a new program. This already has to be in existence. So you should already be renting a vehicle for either retail recovery or home deliveries. How did you pay for your rental last year? Or how did you pay for your retail recovery or home deliveries last year? List it out. And again, what is the impact on your community? Now, the last budget section here is going to be for capital equipment. Lots of information provided, just like I stated at the beginning, and it's stated above in the instructions section. We relist those vendors, and you may apply for up to 3 different types of equipment. If you are applying for more than one type of equipment, the most critical need has to be listed first. Please provide all of the quote information for each of your quotes, but over on the right, the total requested amount should only be for the actual quote that you want. Of the 2 quotes that you receive, the quote that you want is going to be above the quote that you don't want. So list them in priority. So not only do you have to prioritize if you want more than one piece of equipment, you also have to prioritize which quote you are actually requesting funds for. Below are all of the uploaded files that you can share those quotes with. Tell us the impact on your community. If there's a critical need, meaning if you do not receive this equipment, you cannot continue to operate as normal. Explain that here. Explain the critical need. And then what is your funding plan for the installation, operation, and maintenance? How do you plan, if you receive this, how do you plan to pay for the upkeep of it? List out all of your current food service equipment that you have in your agency. This is if you're requesting for a new refrigerator. This includes all of your refrigerators, all of your freezers, your shelving, your anything that you have that is for food service and its equipment. List it here. Tell us whether or not it's HPNAP, or if it was non-HPNAP, that means it's purchased with other funds, and the year that it was purchased. If you are replacing a current piece of equipment, you have a refrigerator that has been repaired 3 times and the repair guy says, hey, it's not worth it. You probably should look into getting a new unit. Tell us which piece of equipment and why. How did you pay for your food service equipment purchases last year? If you did, if you didn't have any purchases last year, you just leave this blank. And again, if there's any other information that you want to share with us around your other funding sources, go ahead and list that out. Now that you have seen all the budget categories, once you complete that section and determine how much you are requesting, remember, you can request more than one category. We are limiting you to 3 priorities. The first priority is what you most need. And then second and third, simply put in the amounts and it will total up down here. Remember, maximum operation support amount that you can request is $6,000. The maximum amount for equipment is $8,000. These sections should never go above that, and so you should never have more than $14,000 listed in your total request amount. Once you complete all this, go ahead and submit, and it comes in, and if it's submitted early enough, we will take a look at it and send that back out to you. So that's the application itself. Let's go ahead and recap a little bit what documentation one would need to apply for each of those funding categories. If applying for staffing, remember only direct service workers may be funded and administrative personnel are not fundable. You'll need to provide a current job description, including highlights of the tasks. Remember, you don't need percentages anymore, but those highlights must be for tasks related to food service. Percentages of time, like I said, no longer required, but you will have to list approximately how many hours per day or per week that the staff or volunteer works on food assistance. Please tell us which supporting docs you plan on showing proof of when you do your follow-ups. For utilities, if you're applying for utilities, complete the tables provided and then add those tables together. So remember, there's table A, table B, and then A plus B. That's the maximum amount that you can apply for. If you're doing space, it has to be currently occupied space, and the space, just go ahead and complete that table. Make sure that you're uploading a current copy of your lease agreement. And if it is shared space, upload that blueprint so that we can identify that space. If you're applying for disposables, only non-durable disposable supplies are allowable, and complete the table or upload your budget. And then for transportation, remember, this is cost for transportation of food from retail donors or vendors to your program or for home deliveries, and not for picking up food at the food bank. Complete the table, and this could be for either mileage or reimbursement or for vehicle rental. So if you are doing the vehicle rental, upload the lease agreements and the quotes. And then for capital equipment, remember that to obtain at least 2 vendor price quotes for each piece of equipment. It's apples to apples, not apples to oranges, such as a 1-door fridge to a 2-door fridge. We cannot accept temporary sales prices. We do provide you with a preferred vendors list. You do not have to use those vendors, but please steer away from box stores, because remember, you should be getting a signature on those quotes. Keep in mind you're applying in March, maybe April, and if you are awarded, we're not issuing those checks until the middle to end of July. So those prices need to be good for that length of time. Make sure that you're completing the tables to the best of your ability. Prioritize. You're going to prioritize if you're requesting more than one piece of equipment. You're going to prioritize your quotes for equipment. So that first quote is going to be the one that you want to go with. Also, prioritize if you are requesting more than one budget category. This is going to help guide the review committee on their decision-making process. However, keep in mind that priority it's not guaranteed. One, you're not guaranteed to get an award at all, but then depending on what is provided for documentation or what is said in the application, the review committee may choose to change your priority and not give you your first priority, but maybe award you your second or third. Get it in early. Can't stress this enough. Early submissions will be reviewed by myself and or Bree. We will recommend any edits. If we find anything that needs to be changed or altered, we'll let you know if you're missing information. We will check your math. So get it in early. Make sure you're also collaborating with others within your organization. So early submissions, we offer edits, and we check it for the missing docs. Let's take a look at the timeline. We kind of went over it quickly in the instructions section, but one more time with oomph. The grant opens Saturday, March 1st at midnight. The due date is May 16th. It's a Friday, 1 p.m. If you have started an application by the 16th and you just didn't get a chance to get it in yet, we will extend your due date to the 23rd. We will accept any late applications up until May 23rd at 1 p.m. That's one more week. You will lose points. The review committee will meet in person on Tuesday, June 17th. Award notifications will be out by the end of June. You will be requested, if you are awarded, to sign an agreement. And new this year, you will have to update the budget. Once that's in, we will send out the checks in probably closer to the end of July. And then you're done until you have to submit your first round of documentation. So again, for regular operation support, that is the first Friday in February. But if you are awarded funding for equipment, we need proof of purchase by October 1st. That's it in a nutshell. But if you do have questions or concerns around the application process or the HPNAP in general, please know you can always reach out to your programs and partnerships coordinator. They're very knowledgeable in HPNAP, and also Bree and myself. Thank you.